Hi, and welcome to this episode of Brainy Moms. I'm your host, Dr. Amy Moore, coming to you today from Colorado Springs, Colorado. And I am joined by my lovely co-host today, Sandy Zamalis, coming to us from Stanton, Virginia. We are excited to welcome our guest, Punam Saxena. Punam is a parent impact coach, TEDx speaker, podcaster, and author of the book, Parent Power: Navigate School and Beyond. Her work focuses on bridging the gap and fostering a stronger relationship between parents and schools by empowering parents to become partners in their child's education.
Welcome, Punam.
Hi, so nice to see you girls.
We're so glad you're here. This topic is extremely timely in that from an education perspective, we're still recovering from the pandemic's impact on learning. And I believe now more than ever, it is so important for every parent to learn how to build a strong relationship with their child's educators. Before we get started, however, can you share with our listeners a little bit of your background and how you became passionate about helping parents find their power when advocating for their kids?
Yes, I'd love to. So I started out, well, I actually fell into education. I come from a family of educators, and like most children, they don't want to do what their parents did or their family does. So I was like, I'm not going to be in education. And what I found was that it is the backbone of everything we do and every opportunity that we have. So I started teaching at a very young age, and I want to say I retired from teaching 10 years later, but I left teaching when my children were born. I had 4 children in 4 years, and I started volunteering just for fun, just to get out of the house, just to kind of spy on my kids, especially in kindergarten. You know, they get into tons of trouble in kindergarten. But I wanted to see what they were doing. I wanted to get to know their teachers who were spending so much time with my children every single day. And eventually, that relationship grew. And it grew to a point where we became friends. And then we began to partner with each other because I was able to bring challenges that my child was having and tell the teacher, and we would be on the path to finding a solution. Now, I will tell you that part of bringing a challenge to the teacher is having a solution. Because when you were solution oriented, you have more credibility. You're not just whining and complaining. So that's probably part of the meat of what we're going to talk about, but that's actually what developed over 20 years. And when they all went off to college and left me, I decided that I needed to turn this passion into a mission. And that's what I've been doing for the last 4 years.
So I'd love for you to start even further back and talk about what happened to you as a child and how that kind of impacted your whole movement, right? To be such an advocate for this. You talked about it in your TED Talk, and so we'd love for our listeners to hear that story.
Sure. But they should also listen to the TED Talk as well.
Absolutely.
This is a snippet of it. So I'm a first generation Indian American. I was born in Auburn, Alabama, which is, a mecca for all Indians to go to when they immigrate. But my dad was doing his PhD, and that's where I was born. So I grew up in the South. I grew up in rural Georgia, south of Atlanta. And my parents didn't know how to navigate the education system here. It's very different from the one in India. And teachers in India are revered. So you don't really question them. Well, you take what they say as gospel. And so in first grade, I was given the gifted test. And I didn't make it. In second grade, I was given the gifted test. And I remember specifically that day taking the test. I was so excited because this time I knew what was going to be on it. I knew I could pass it. And then the other thing I remember about second grade is the day Mrs. Smith told me I didn't make it for the second time. And it took my confidence from a very high level to nearly invisible. I lost all my confidence. My grades went from straight A's to straight C's. I became a CD student. And it really changed the trajectory of my life. Now, what happened was my parents were immigrants and they didn't know. And they tried everything in their wheelhouse. But when you don't have a support system and you don't have that relationship, because the teachers are not reaching out and my parents didn't know they could reach out, there was that disconnect. And so I fell through the cracks. And, I don't blame my parents at all. I in fact really applaud them, because what could not happen for my brother and I happened for the next Indian family that moved in. And the older child in that family did not make it the first time he took the test. And my parents said, nothing doing, you need to go and ask why, make them tell you what needs to be done. And they did it. He got into the gifted program. He went to MIT and he became a successful businessman at 26. And the difference is night and day. And when I look back at those moments in my life, they were defining moments. And they were, what's the word I'm looking for? They were eye-opening to the point where there was no other option but for me to do this. For my children, for other children, other students whose parents never walked through the doors, especially in high school. That's where I come from. I come from a place of let's make this better, not worse.
Well, so I'm super fascinated by something you said. You said that, the reason that your parents didn't step in and advocate for you was because that wasn't culturally how it was done in India, right? Because they just revered the teachers and let the teachers do their jobs, basically.
Yes.
Well, in America, especially our current culture, everyone has an opinion, everyone, right? And everyone is right. So why is it that we still see parents shy away from advocating for their children at school? They're voicing their opinion on social media. They're voicing their opinion at cocktail parties, around the water cooler at the office, everywhere. Why do they not do that at school?
I believe it's twofold. One is they're too busy, or they say they're too busy. I have projects, I have deadlines, I've got to be at work, I have to clock in at 8, I have to, clock out by 6, and I've got meetings back to back. And, that's an easy, I hate to use the word cop out, but it's a cop out. Because if you can text your friend about the latest crazy thing that's happened, then you have time to send an email to your child's teacher. It's no different. And the other reason is that I believe many parents don't find that they're valued in the school system. They are the outsiders, the teachers, the administrators, the support staff. They all know education. They know the bureaucratic pieces of it. And parents generally don't. And my philosophy is you don't have to. That's why you have teachers and administrators. What you have to do is talk about what your child is doing and where they are socio-emotionally. That's the piece that teachers need that they're not getting. If there was a huge tragedy in your home last night and you send your child to school the next day and the child is not performing and the parent never says anything, how do they know? They're assuming that everything is fine, that the child's just being non-compliant. So our relationship with parents is, our relationship with teachers is crucial because we're giving them the missing pieces that teachers aren't seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. I always talk about the importance of building empathy in teachers. And so I teach teachers about the ADHD brain, for example, and help them understand that children with ADHD have brains that work differently so that I can build empathy so that when teachers see behaviors in the classroom, they don't take it personally, right? They say, wait a minute, how can I support this child? Because this child is not doing this to me, but has a struggle. And so I kind of see it as the same thing that parents, the more they share about what's going on in their child's lives, whether it's a diagnosis, whether it's a trauma that has happened, whether it's just a simple, hey, he didn't get enough sleep last night, so just wanted you to know, then that builds empathy, right? And it kind of, then the teacher doesn't say, why is he behaving like this? He'll say, oh, mom said.
And it's something really simple. It's not, when we talk about parent engagement, immediately people go to, I need to quit my job. I need to be on campus all the time. And I need to be in the thick of everything that's happening. And that's not the case. And I think parents shy away because they think that. But it's really a text, an email, a phone call. If you're picking up your child in the afternoon, just getting there 5 minutes early and hopping out and just checking in with the teacher, something really, really simple. And the other thing that I will say that I think parents shy away from engaging is that parents are quick to not put blame on their child for behaviors. I mean, when I was growing up, I'm much older than you ladies, and I was always the one who got it before the teacher even was contacted. Well, the teacher contacted me and left me a message. Oh boy, I'm in trouble now. Because it's not the shifting of the blame. I was responsible for whatever reason the teacher was calling me. And so when the teachers reached out to me with my own children, the first thing I did was turn to mine and say, what responsibility did you have? You may not be the reason, but you must have had a part in it. And it's better for you to tell me the truth now so that we can solve it. And I think parents don't want to hear that their child isn't doing well or they had a behavior issue because they don't want to have to deal with it because it's too much. It's one more added thing on their plate.
Sure. And many times they're already seeing those behaviors at home too. Yeah.
And the teachers are just, they're just, what's the word? I'm losing all track of my brain cells today.
It's because you're much older than we are.
I know.
I laughed when you said that because I'm sure you are not. We just have really good lighting.
But if you're seeing it at home, you can kind of ignore it, right? That's just who my child is. But when the teacher is saying it, they're confirming that behavior. And oftentimes we don't want to hear it from other people. So there's a lot of mixed emotions when it comes to parent engagement. And I understand that. But
Do you
I,
feel like, sorry, Punam, I was going to ask, do you feel that sometimes parents might have a misunderstanding about the training a teacher has engaged in terms of dealing with different kinds of students, especially students that may have dyslexia or ADHD? I feel like in conversations that I've had, a lot of times there's a little bit of like this perception of expertise that parents don't realize they're the missing piece of that conversation.
right.
But maybe that teacher has never seen a student like your child, or and needs to learn and grow with this new student on how to manage and help this student be successful.
So I was a special education teacher when I was teaching. And this is also in my TED talk, by the way. Just want to throw that out there. This little anecdote, but we were sitting in an individualized education plan meeting, an IEP meeting. And, of course, all of the professionals are there. I'm there as the teacher. You've got the guidance counselor, the classroom teacher, the district personnel. All of us are sitting there. And this mother, she worked an hourly job at McDonald's. And she had to take 2 buses to get to this meeting. And she sat there for 30 minutes, and we were talking about all the goals this kid needed. He needs to, have remediation in reading and phonics and math, science, in every single subject. We were literally taking his worst attributes and putting them on paper. And the mother did not say anything for 30 minutes. And I turned to her as the classroom teacher because I'm thinking, as a mom, why is she not saying a word? And I said, so, Mrs. So-and-so, what would you like to see your son do? And she said, you're right. All of these are deficits in his academics, all of them. And can he improve? Absolutely. But in 7 years, when he graduates, I need him to be able to have life skills, to know that he's responsible to wash the dishes, to pay his electric bill. I need him to learn those skills. I honestly thought to myself, she doesn't care if he can't multiply. That's not a life skill that he's going to need ever. And so until we as teachers engage our parents, they're not going to come to the table. So you're right, Sandy, they're not going to come to the table because there is that level of expertise and parents feel inferior. But what they know best that the teacher doesn't is their child. They know their strengths, they know their weaknesses, and they know what the child wants to do. Not every school, let me rephrase this, not every child is going to be in academics. They're not going to go on to college. They're going to go on to a different post-secondary program. So we have to have flexibility in our academics, and parents can provide that.
So, how much power does the parent have in an IEP meeting?
In my opinion, 100%. The curriculum is so interesting that the state passes down because it's supposed to be for the average child. They're looking at the median, right? They're not looking above or below. So that child who's struggling may never get to that. So are we pushing them to a point where they're going to just completely fall apart and be unable to perform at any level? So I think there's a lot of value in rethinking how we educate our children. And we do need to know, our children need to know some things, but they don't need to know calculus. I don't remember calculus, do you?
I do not. Right.
Exposure is one thing, but expecting them to perform at a level is something very different.
Yeah, I've said in the past, we don't all grow up and do the same job. So why are we taught exactly the same way? Why do we learn exactly the same things in the exact same order when that isn't our life trajectory?
I saw on Twitter the other day, a woman said, my husband has retired. He's 56 years old. He's worked for 30 years and he was an electrician.
Yeah.
We don't teach how to be an electrician in high school. But let me tell you, when the electricity goes out, who are we calling? Because those PhDs are not going to know how to fix it.
Absolutely right. Right. We don't value the apprenticeship model in America like Europe does. We don't value the trades and the alternative post-secondary experience that you were just saying in America. So what needs to change in your opinion for us to value that and for us to kind of bring that into the high school environment, right? To show that there are these options and alternatives to college.
And when I was in high school, we had shop, we had home ec, we had these classes that taught you life skills. So even if you didn't go on to become an electrician, you at least had some basic knowledge. We don't have that anymore. So in India, they have a class called general knowledge and is called GK. And every child has to take it. And it is general knowledge about life, about your society. So my cousins in India and their children had much more worldly views and understanding about history than we could ever imagine. And it is because that's part of their curriculum. So we don't, like you said, we don't value it enough to put it into our curriculum. And yet those are the people we rely on when we need help.
Absolutely.
I'm fascinated by when you were telling your story about yourself, how that one failure had such an impact on you and how you thought about yourself and it impacted your grades. And we've talked on this podcast before about, the story that you're writing inside your mind of your life. What was that story that you told yourself when you made that, perceived failure, and how that impacted you? And then what key helped you flip that and in order to become the successful adult that you became?
So when you're an immigrant and English is not your first language, Hindi is my first language, and you're not socially accepted, because I grew up in a community that was Black and white. We were the only Indians in our community. So we were the outcast. So I already felt that in my social circle. So that was one aspect. And I'm a very social person. So that was a huge red flag. And mind you, I'm 8 years old, and I'm still in tune to this. And so the one thing that I had was academics. I could bury myself into my schoolwork because I knew that I had control over that. I knew I had control over my grades, and I knew I was good at my grades. because I was able to focus on them. So when Mrs. Smith told me that I didn't make it, it was just one more, red X on my heart that said, well, now I'm not good enough socially, and now I'm not good enough academically. And it became, why bother? If I'm not good in either, then what's the point? What changed is my husband, when we got married, I was 23 years old, still in that black hole. He said, no more are you that person, so stop living there. And I went from being a mediocre undergrad to being an honors master's student in 3 years. And I started to realize the worth that I had. And that's what changed. It's the mindset that someone cares about you enough to lift you up. Now, my parents tried to do everything they could. I give them 100% credit for that. So I don't want to diminish their efforts. But as a child, you just want someone of your peer to embrace you. And that just happened to be my husband. And since then, it's just been fun. It's been a lot.
Watch out, world.
Yeah, it's and I'll let you all on a little secret. 4 weeks ago, I started my doctorate program.
Oh, congratulations.
Excellent.
Because why not? Why not?
You had in your article that I read when I was prepping for our talk today, you said that one of the things you like to help parents do is give their kids opportunity to make safe fails. But at the same time, which I find this to be tricky, also have expectations, right? So you've got, we want to make sure we have understood expectations, but we also want to make sure you have safety to fail. How do you help parents with that? I find that dichotomy really interesting, because a lot of times we see kids in our center that just have that fear of failure. In fact, I did an assessment today and I opened the page and I had a student go, stand up and say, I quit. I quit. And I thought, wow, okay, come back. And I had to reel him back in. But it's that fear of failure can just stop a student in their tracks. If they get overwhelmed, they immediately shut down.
They do shut down. So I'll reference an article that I read in 2015, and it was by a Stanford professor. And she said, and I will say she had the audacity to say, that we parents do not give our children the opportunity to fail. Because when they come to Stanford, the suicide rate is very high at these prestigious institutions. And she said, because you're not teaching them to fail, we're losing them and they're losing their lives. And my son had applied to Stanford and didn't get in. And he was a very good student. He is a very good student. And so I just chuckled to myself. I'm like, lady, you don't accept failure. My child got an 89B in one class, and that wasn't good enough. He was a class president. He had done all of these things. And 89B is not even failing, right? So the part about us teaching them to fail is very important, because when they get out into the world, they need to understand that not everyone is going to accept what they're putting out. And that's really important, because learning how to fail is more important than learning how to win or be successful. And it's something that we have to teach. So when you're walking that fine line, what I recommend is look at what the activity is. If it's Pee-wee soccer, it's not going to matter, right? If they didn't score a goal or they missed the ball, whatever. I know parents, I'm sorry to all you parents out there who believe that that's really important. But in the long scheme of things, it's not going to change their life. So we have to keep it in perspective. So when we're talking about safe fails, I would say, Sandy, we have to keep it in perspective. If it's life altering, we need to step in. If it is not life altering, like an 89B, it's not life altering. Now, did it alter his life to go to Stanford? Yes. He's doing just fine. And so we have to keep that in perspective when we're talking about safe fails. And safe failing is, it's good for their confidence. It's good for motivation. The big fails are where we lose them. And we lose that confidence, like the test that I took in second grade. That was a big fail in my mind. So we have to look at that. And a safe fail for one child may be a big fail for another. So we have to look at that child individually when we're processing how we want to proceed.
Yeah, and that absolutely builds resilience to be supported through those fails, for sure.
Yes. Oh, yes.
So we need to take a break, and Sandy's going to read a word from our sponsor. And when we come back, we want you to talk to us about your book.
Are you concerned about your child's reading or spelling performance? Are you worried your child's reading curriculum isn't thorough enough? Well, most learning struggles aren't the result of poor curriculum or instruction. They're typically caused by having cognitive skills that need to be strengthened. Skills like auditory processing, memory, and processing speed. Learning RX one-on-one brain training and structured literacy programs are designed to target and strengthen the skills that we rely on for reading, spelling, writing, and learning. Learning RX can help you identify which skills may be keeping your child from performing their best. The Learning RX team would like to help you get your child on the path to a brighter and more confident future. Join the growing list of more than 100,000 children and adults trained at Learning RX. Give Learning RX a call at 866-BRAIN01 or visit learningrx.com. That's learningrx.com.
And we're back talking to Punam Saxena about the importance of teacher and parent relationships, or parent and school relationships. And so Punam, you've written a book called Parent Power: Navigate School and Beyond. Talk to us about that.
The book is about normalizing parenting. Every single one of us is overwhelmed at some point in our parenting. And I would say sometimes it's minute by minute in what we have to tackle. And so this book kind of breaks it down into chapters so you can process different scenarios that you're living and see that it's all okay. So the book starts with self-care, because that's the first thing that parents, especially moms, throw out the window. We're like, well, I don't really need to do my breathing exercises today or go for a walk or whatever. Yes, you do. Because when you're so anxious at the end of the day, those activities are what keep you grounded. And so the first thing we have to do is take care of ourselves. We can't take care of anyone else until we're solid. Part of this chapter focuses on the other thing that we don't do, which is give ourselves grace. We work at 100 miles an hour. Everything has to be perfect. If, our project is not looking perfect, we stress about it. If there are dishes in the sink, we're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I haven't gotten to those dishes yet. We're constantly in this on the hamster wheel trying to attain this level of perfection that is impossible. And then we feel bad about it. We don't give ourselves grace to say, you know what, I'm really tired. I got 10 things on my list done, and the 11th thing, which is the dishes, is not going to get done tonight. Or I'm too tired to cook and I feel bad that I'm taking my kids through the drive-through for the third time this week. Kids are happy, right? They don't have to eat the broccoli or the spinach. They're thrilled. But we don't allow ourselves to feel that that openness to say, you know what, it's okay. I didn't do great this week. I'm going to try and switch things up for next week. So self-care is a big part of it, and giving ourselves grace is a huge part of this book. The other part, like we were talking about sports and Pee Wee soccer, you know, haven't we all been to a sporting event and you're looking at this parent going, wow, you need to chill out. What is wrong with you? You were screaming at 8-year-olds. They're just running around. They don't know what's going on. They're having fun. You know, but this parent's taking it so seriously. Well, what happens to that child? That's what that child sees. And then the team learning that happens is not occurring because it's not fun anymore. It's work. And then it moves through social media, the impact of social media and how we as parents can maneuver it. For me, social media is a double-edged sword. It's great. You can Google anything. And the other side is you can Google anything. How do you navigate that? And it's by having honest conversations with your children, monitoring what they're doing. Mine always said that I was infringing on their rights. And I said, you betcha. That's my job. My job is until you're 18 to make sure that you're in safe places. And I'm sorry if it, cramps your style. But it's better for us to be in a safe environment than a potentially dangerous one. And I think parents are hesitant a lot of times to check what's on their children's phones and to monitor their social media. I really encourage you to monitor it. Their brains are not developed enough to understand all the nuances that are occurring. And our children are exposed to so many adult situations that we were never exposed to prior to social media. So it's vitally important that parents check that. And then the last chapter is empty nesting. We go the whole gamut, talking about how to manage having an empty nest. What do? You've raised these little people and they just leave you? Yeah, you want them to, don't you? I don't want my children here when they're 50 hanging out with me. Oh, go. I want you to come home because you want to come home, right? And so we want to be able to provide those independent living skills. Now, whether they live with you for a short period of time or not, that's very different. But they still need to have those independent skills to be able to live in the real world. And the other side of that is, hey, you can write a book. You can do a podcast. You can do a TEDx talk. You can do all of these things because now you have time to focus on the things you're really interested in doing. So that's what the book is about. Each chapter ends with Punam's perspective, which is an anecdote of my life of why I believe this is so important, or the chapter is so important. So yeah, it's fun, it's informative, and it's a little snarky.
We like a little snarky.
It's who I am. It just comes out naturally.
And that's available everywhere books are sold.
Yes, absolutely.
What's so funny, Sandy?
Nothing. I was laughing at you too. Snarky.
Snarky.
I'm all about snarky.
So you have
In
a
nice
podcast
way, right? I
Yes,
can
of
be
course.
self-deprecating and snarky all at the same time.
Right.
I think that's a great tool that parents can have, is starting to laugh at themselves.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you have a podcast too, right, Punam? In fact, you
Yes.
call your episodes Edusodes. Tell our listeners about that.
Yeah. So my whole business started with a podcast because I'm like, I can talk, but what am I going to talk about? I'm going to talk. And then I realized what I'm going to talk about is things that are important to me, which is parent engagement. And so that's what EDU is. That's all we do is we talk about strategies. We bring in professionals to talk to us. I brought in my parents to talk about the immigrant experience and navigating the education system here. I brought in my son who is gay, and we talked about what it's like to be a a gay minority in America, because there all of these things are happening in our world, and if we don't talk about them, then we're only heightening the divide. And so my job is to bridge those stories and those strategies so that parents can see themselves in that situation and then move forward and see the value of being engaged in education, because it is a value and it's an investment in your child.
So we're almost out of time, but I would love it if you would leave our listeners with some quick tips on creating those relationships with schools, the best ways to communicate, where they can start.
Sure. I think the first thing is that we have to be willing to do it. We have to be willing to prioritize our children and their academics. And that doesn't mean you have to be in touch with them, the teachers, every single day. You can put it on your calendar and touch base with them every week or every other week, and just make it a habit. Because when we make it a habit, it becomes more part of our lives. And I will tell you, as a teacher, I want that input. So I would say, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Take that first step and reach out and say, hi, I'm so-and-so's mom, and I would love to know how Johnny is doing in class this week. Is there anything that I can do at home to support you? Pretty simple, two or three sentences. The other thing that I would say is talk to your child. What's happening in the classroom? Let them know that you're interested in what's happening. Because when you show interest in them, they're going to ask you what you did today. Did you get your big project done, Mom? That's a huge part of building that relationship, because children are really proud when you get your project done. They're going to go to school the next day and say, guess what? My mom did this big project. And then the teacher might hear it and go, oh, well, let's talk about the project. We're creating that symbiotic relationship. And that's ultimately what we want, is a symbiotic relationship. The other thing that I would say is it's not complex. It's not the PTA mom. It's not the homeroom mom. It's not the party planners that you need to be. You just need to be engaged. That's it. So that's my strategy. It's not rocket science. It's just reach out. And I would say, do not reach out when your child has an issue. That's the wrong time to say, hey, I think you really messed up my kid. They came home crying today. Okay, well, that's not the way you're going to create a relationship. That's the fastest way to get a reputation for being a bully parent. Mm. If you create that relationship on the outset, when there is an issue, you go in and you talk to the teacher, because you have a relationship with them. They're partnering. We're partnering together. And it's amazing the solutions you'll find.
So what I hear you saying is, if we start off with creating these positive communications and interactions off the bat, then when we do have an issue, it's much better received.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we've all seen parents, come in all huffy and puffy. Well, that's not productive, I will say. And I will also say that teachers are human. They're with kids all day. They're craving adult interaction, right? Most of them want to talk to somebody who's an adult, but they also want to know that they have an ally in that parent. That if there's an issue that they can call and say, hey, this is what happened. My daughter's high school my daughter's high school calculus teacher called me, 12th grade, she's a senior, and said, you know what? So-and-so's having a really rough week. Is everything okay at home? Wow, right? You don't hear that happening very often, but it happens when you create those relationships. And teachers knowing that they have an ally and a parent is powerful stuff. Powerful, because they can't make change from the outside. They can't make changes from the inside, but they can talk to you about it, and then maybe you can help find a solution to make a change that will be better for everyone.
I love that. Thank you so much for being with us today, Punam, and for sharing your wisdom and tips. And listeners, if you would like more information about Punam and her work, her website is edu-me.net. And you can find her on Facebook and Instagram at the EduMe. That's the EduMe. We'll put all those links and handles in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening today. Please follow us on social media at The Brainy Moms if you like us. And if you liked our show today or any day, we would love it if you would leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or whatever platform you get your podcasts. If you would rather watch us, we are also on YouTube, so you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Brainy Moms. If you would like to be on our show or suggest a guest or topic for our show, you can email me at dramy@learningrx.com or visit brainymoms.co. So look, we know that you're busy moms and we're busy moms. So until next time, we're out.
Have a great week.